Yes, you read the title right. You can delete your truck at home anywhere in the world with a kit from the Diesel Dudes. We have a kit here for this 2019 Ram 2500, and I'm gonna go through it with you on the kit itself and how to install it, so stay tuned. So this is the kit you get with the Diesel Dudes. You can do different tuning options, but I recommend the EasyLink Auto Agent. It's the most modern tuning style out there. It's also gonna be the easiest if you're a newbie to tuning vehicles. Comes with a 5-position switch so you can switch power levels on the fly. A bypass cable, you need this to tune any 2018 and newer Cummins. And then an EGR delete kit here and an exhaust. And I went with a 5-inch exhaust for this truck just because I think a 5-inch exhaust sounds better. But truthfully, delete pipes compared to a 5-inch exhaust, they're gonna perform the same and give you the same fuel mileage. It's really just personal preference. Just one quick disclaimer, Diesel Dudes will ship worldwide. But make sure you know your laws before you go ahead and delete your truck, because in a lot of places you won't be able to register your truck for public road use after, and in some places it's just outright illegal, even if it's for off-road use only. So look up your laws before you delete your truck, and if you do delete your truck, I recommend keeping all your factory parts so you can put your truck back to stock if you have to. And as always, there will be a link in the description for this kit. This is for a 2019 to 2021 Cummins. I will be making more videos on other years and makes of diesel engines, so if you want, subscribe if you want to see more down the road. If the link looks a little funny to you, it's because it's an affiliate link, so if you click that link and buy something, I make a small commission, and that's how I afford to put food on my table and diesel in my tank. But I don't like wasting time, so we're going to get right into this video, and I'm going to give you all the information I can as quickly as possible so I don't bore you. So first thing I always do with these trucks is I tune them. I tune them first, make sure that process goes well, because the worst thing you can have is if the tune doesn't work for some reason, and now you've already removed all your emission components, and now your truck's dead in the water. When ordering a tune, remember that 2019 and 2021 6.7 Cummins came with a CP4 injection pump. There's a recall to switch it to a CP3 pump, which I highly recommend you do. But anyways, when you order the tune, they need to know which pump you have. So make sure you have that information. And if you don't, call a dealer, give them your VIN, and they'll tell you. Like I said, you can also pick which exhaust you want, whether it's delete pipes, 4-inch or 5-inch exhaust. There's different options on their websites for that. You don't have to do an EGR delete either. But if you delete the truck, you have to tune it and you have to replace the exhaust. The EGR has to be unplugged, but you don't have to physically remove it. In this video, we are gonna remove it. And I think your best deal is always going with the delete bundles. But that's just my opinion. All right, so we ordered the tune. We got our EasyLink Auto Agent. When you order the tune, again, they need to know which pump you have, as well as any modifications you have done to the truck. Chances are, if you're deleting the truck, this is probably your first major mod you've done to it. But down the road, if you have bigger turbo or injectors, stuff like that, they're gonna need to know. You're gonna have to provide them with your VIN number, as well as you may have to provide them with the serial number of your auto agent. Another thing they're gonna need when you order your tune is they're gonna need to know if you have the 68 RFE transmission or the ASIN. It's super easy to tell if your transmission dipstick is on your passenger side, you have the 68 RFE. And if you have the transmission dipstick over in this area on the driver's side, you have the ASIN transmission. So what you're gonna wanna do is download the EasyLink Auto Agent app on your phone, and you're gonna need to create an account with EasyLink. And you're gonna have to do that first before you do anything. Once you've done that, we're gonna install this bypass cable. This can be tricky to show, but I will do my best. This thing is gonna plug into, I believe it's a white and green box, kind of up under the dash over here. So under the dash, here's your park brake pedal. And then you see those boxes up there. We're gonna use the plugs that are on the far left. Hopefully you can see this, but we're gonna go to the left side. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 that are plugged in there. And then the 5th one down is the one we're gonna be using. It will be the first open plug on the left column from the top. Okay, then if you can see that, I have on the 5th one down, that black cable is plugged in. Then with the other end, you're just gonna simply plug it in to your OBD plug. Go ahead and grab your auto agent and plug that in to the other end, just like that. If you wanna keep this plugged in all the time, you can just zip tie this wire up out of the way, and on your factory OBD plug, there's 2 little tabs you can press on the side and you can pop it up, and you can just zip tie this up under your dash. And before you tune anything, it's always good to have a battery charger on. You want consistent voltage and you don't want your batteries to die during a tune. It can break your ECM and your truck will not start. So get a battery charger set to 10 amp and leave it. For this next part, you're gonna use your phone. You're going to connect to your auto agent through the EasyLink app. You might have to go into your settings and find the Wi-Fi or Bluetooth and connect to it. And then once you've connected, you use the app on your phone to tune the truck. All you need is either a Wi-Fi or a cellular connection to download the tune files out of the cloud. I will screen record my phone so you can see what I gotta do. Before you tune the truck, you should also clear any codes it may have. So if you do have an engine light on, strongly recommend clearing that before you tune the truck. I'll show you how to do that with the EasyLink. Make sure the truck is in the run position first. So open up the EasyLink app. You're gonna have to accept a couple things, accept terms and conditions. And yeah, then it should take you to here where you gotta connect it to the Wi-Fi. So go to your Wi-Fi, you should see it pop up there, click that and it should connect. Then go back in the app. This should work. If not, you might have to try it once or twice. This is just saying you're going to link the truck with GDP tuning, which you want to do. Hit link. And then behind it is just kind of stuff you can monitor your gauges and temperatures and stuff like that. This is just saying it's set up to link with one vehicle only. Say yes, and then describe your vehicle. I'm just going to say stock truck doing deletes. That's all they really need to know. If you had a bunch of aftermarket upgrades, you'd want to put it here. This is just saying I don't have Wi-Fi, so I'm selecting use cellular data. Now a firmware update's probably going to come, so I would just hit install now and follow the prompts to get you through that. That's super easy. Once the update is complete, it'll bring you back to this dashboard, and I'll show you how to clear codes now. So go up to the top left, hit the menu, go to DTC, and that should start reading codes right there. This is going to say no trouble codes found. If there were, you could click clear codes, but this truck doesn't have any. So now we're going to tune the truck, go back to the menu, go select vehicle, and then we're going to go down to ECU profiles. Here we're going to go into the custom folder, and then you're going to see 3 single tunes at the top. You have 0 horsepower, 150 horsepower, or 75 horse, or the shift on the fly, which is the bottom one. We're going to install the shift on the fly, so you click download, and then when it's downloaded, you can hit install, and it'll say it will update the following module, the ECU, and you can click proceed. Once it starts doing its thing, you basically just follow the prompts. It'll tell you to turn it off, so turn the truck off, hit continue. It'll tell you to turn it on, turn the truck on, hit continue. It should start programming it at this point, so I'm going to fast forward this up. This whole process, the tuning part, took about 15 minutes. I'm just going to speed it up really quick. Tune's just finishing up here. It'll tell you to turn it off, so turn the truck off, hit continue, turn the truck on, hit continue. And then it says it completed successfully. So it's all done. You can exit out of the EasyLink app. Your truck is tuned. Once the truck is tuned, I just like to make sure it starts and everything worked good. Yeah, everything sounds good. No engine lights, got throttle. Should be good. Once the truck is tuned, you can remove the bypass cable and the auto agent, or like I said, you can zip tie it all up out of the way. Now, if you just chose a single tune option, you are done tuning the truck. There's nothing more to do. And if you chose the shift on the fly option, then you got to install one of these switches. So for the video, obviously we're going to be installing this switch just so I can show you how to do that. So we need to run these wires through the firewall into the engine bay and then leave this switch inside the cab. So I'm going to use this hood release grommet. I'm going to cut a little slit or a hole through it, and then I'm going to put the wires through there. I'm just going to take a little screwdriver, poke it through, grab a little file, try to make it a little bigger, maybe even get a bigger screwdriver. See if I can get it through like that. I'm gonna take a coat hanger and fish it down through from this side into the cab. Coat hanger is through. Now I'm going to grab my wires and I'm going to use electrical tape and I'm gonna tape them up on this and pull them through. Just be careful with these ends. They're delicate and you don't wanna bend them or wreck them. Okay, we'll see if that works. Pull very gently. You don't want to rip or break anything. So I pulled the coat hanger out, which means I need to make that hole a little bit bigger. The coat hanger popped off, but they actually went in most of the way. So I bet you they're sticking out here and I can probably just use my hand. If I can get my hand in there and pull it out the rest of the way. Here we go. Remove the tape. Inspect your connectors, just make sure they're still looking good. You're gonna take these wires and you're gonna insert them until you hear a click. Like that. See how they look like from the inside? Now grab a screwdriver and just make sure this red thing is pushed all the way in. Like that. You got your plugs in. The instructions show a red, black, and a white wire. Mine had a purple one. So I just swapped it out with purple and then I emailed them, the diesel dudes, to ask them. So if anything changes and this isn't how it's supposed to go, I will let you know. But as far as I'm concerned, this should work just fine. Obviously, make sure you have the upright position correct when you orientate it for how these wires go in. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna unplug this CCV filter back here. I'll try to get this wire out of the way so I can show you better. So here's the plug. You're gonna wanna kind of bust off this block tab like that. You're gonna have to push this locking thing to the right. Push it in like so. Then you can press down on it at the back here. Push down on that. I'll need 2 hands for it, but push down on that and you can slide it off. Then you're just gonna plug your switch into this plug you just unplugged. Push it in until it clicks. Then if you want, you can pop this retainer back in just like that and kind of make this nice. I ran my wires all behind here, so I'm just gonna zip tie them all up out of the way. Now that's all done under the hood, locate your Allen key that comes with the switch, and we're gonna back off this set screw and we're gonna remove the black knob. It will look like this. Now we're going to take off this brass nut. So the nut and that washer are off. There's another washer in here and it's actually indented down, and that you can change how many positions this switch goes to. Now with this tune, I believe it's just 5. So make sure this stays in the same position or else you'll get like 10 different switch positions and you won't even be able to use them. Another thing I do is I take side cutters and I cut off this little nipple here just because I find it annoying and it's a pain in the ass to drill that and drill this and make them line up. So there, as you can see, I cut it off flush. You can mount the switch wherever. I just like to mount it here. So get an upholstery tool or something so you don't scratch this all up, and pop this out if that's where you want to mount it as well. Now with this out, I'm going to drill I'm going to use a 3/8 drill bit, and I'm going to drill a hole right in the middle. You can, again, put it wherever you want. Just make sure that it's going to be in this open passage so you don't hit the back of the switch on anything. Once you have the hole drilled, insert the switch from the back. If you want, you can put the sticker on that shows you what switch position you're in. I think it just kind of looks, I don't know, I like the cleaner look of without having it. So I'm just gonna put my knob back on like that. Make sure you've ran it out where it's coming from. But yeah, put your washer, your nut on, tighten up the switch, and then put this knob back on and tighten that up. Pop it back into place, and then zip tie up all this wire nice and neat under the dash. And that's what it looks like. If you find it's kind of hard to turn this knob, back off the set screw, pull the knob out just a little bit, and then tighten it back up, because sometimes it will rub on the nut. And that is all that's to it for tuning. Now we can go ahead. I'm gonna do the exhaust next. So what I'm gonna do is put some ramps underneath the passenger side tires, drive it up, just give me a little bit extra room, and I'll show you a rundown on what we gotta do with the exhaust. Got the truck on some ramps. The simple version of this is all we're gonna do is unplug all the sensors on the factory exhaust, unbolt it, and remove it from the truck. If you're pretty mechanically inclined, this should be easy for you. I'm just gonna kind of go over some of the main things that if you've never done a job like this before, something that you can look out for while you're doing it. I wanna keep the video as quick as possible, so I'm not gonna go over every individual detail. I'm just gonna show you what you need to unplug and then how you remove it. One of the first things I like to do is just kind of spray these bolts with a penetrating fluid. There's 4 more here. 1, 2, 3, 4, and the V-band clamp up at the front. This is just gonna make it easier when you go to remove them. They're not gonna be so seized up because exhausts tend to like to seize up. So starting at the back, there is the first bolt there, another one here, and then you have an exhaust hanger up there, and up there, and then one at the very back. I like to spray those with lubricant too, and I use a pry bar and pop them off. This is what the exhaust hanger at the tailpipe looks like. So I'm gonna loosen everything up, pop these hangers off, and remove the tail section of pipe. Tailpipe and then the little piece of pipe in front of it are out. So now we have the actual emission components up here. So you start unplugging everything. Basically, if there's a wire running to the exhaust that is also running to the frame, you gotta disconnect it or unplug it somewhere. So I see 2 here. Moving forward, there are some up on top, which you can't really access them from underneath. Also, you will have your def injector and the plug for that. We'll have to disconnect those. Then you're gonna have 4 nuts. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're gonna disconnect those. Then around to the back, there's more rubber hangers we're gonna have to take off. Then what I do is I lay underneath it and I remove it and lower it down onto my chest. Because you can't access all the connectors while it's up in place, just keep a pick or a flathead screwdriver handy with you. And then as you lower it down, you can lower it onto your body, or better yet, if you have a friend to be under there with you, and then you can disconnect them once you have it a little bit lowered. So once you have it lowered, disconnect all the remaining sensors, and then you can remove that. I think it's the SCR. You can remove that right out of the truck. So here's what I mean. As you can see, I have it loose, but there's still all these wires connected to it. So now that it's down like this though, I can use my hands and I can disconnect all the plugs, and I just have it laying on my stomach like that. 1, 2, I had to unplug this guy and this one here. Then I unplugged the def injector and the def line. This one, you just pop this yellow thing up and it slides off. And then their def line's kind of a pain in the butt. It has a little retainer right here. I just use a right angle pick and I pop it off, and then that slides off. Okay, one more section to go. So for this front DPF filter, what I do is for this exhaust hanger, there's a bolt there and a bolt there. I just remove those, and then when you pull this whole thing out, it will come with this hanger. This guy up here, I pop that hanger off. Going around to the side, here there's another connector. You're gonna push that red locking tab forward and pop it off. There's a couple connectors on the side. Up at the front, I pop this guy off, and then I loosen this V-band. I pull this bolt right out and pop this V-band clamp off. So now what you're gonna do is you're gonna lift this thing up, and you're gonna kind of rotate it a little bit towards the transmission, and then just kind of wiggle it out of there. It's tight, it's a pain in the ass. There's your down pipe, and it is all clear to the back. This thing actually came out easier than I remember them. I basically just lifted it up and just slid it straight out, and it got caught a couple times, but wasn't too bad. There's just 1, 2 connectors, and then this third one right there. Hi, Vinny. Then all I do is I zip tie all these up over there, and the rest are kind of just secure to the frame rail already. If you want, you can tape them up. There's also a thing called a shivvy plug kit you can buy that is just caps for all of them. If you want to go that route, you can. But yeah, the full system is out, so now it's time for the new exhaust. So now my favorite part, obviously, is the exhaust. And this actually looks like a stainless steel exhaust, and the clamps, like, wow, look at that. So typically with these kits, they come with enough pipe that if you had a Mega Cab long box, that it would fit the whole thing. This is just a Mega Cab regular box. So we're probably gonna not use all the pipe, or we're gonna have to trim one of these pieces a little bit shorter. Just start at the front, put that V-band clamp up, and then just start sliding the pieces on. Okay, I got the first pipe on. The V-band clamp is probably gonna be your most challenging thing. It's not that hard once you get the hang of it. I removed this gasket that goes on in there because it wasn't lining up nice with it. You don't really need the gasket, just make sure it's not leaking. I started up and checked and it's not leaking. So this is what it looks like. Obviously you had to put this guy back in. And yeah, so now I'm just gonna go ahead and fill the rest with the rest of the pieces of exhaust, and we'll talk about it at the end. I think I'm gonna have to cut one of these pieces, but I just wanted to make sure that you guys knew this one piece is beveled on both ends. This is the straight pipe kit. If you get it with a muffler, then this will be your muffler piece. Do not cut this piece. This is beveled on both ends, and you need it like that or the kit won't work. So if you hold this piece up in line with the brackets so you know where it's gonna go, you'll see the gap that you have here to here. That pipe is way too long. So measure this gap and cut the piece to length. Make sure you account for the part that's gonna be slid into the exhaust. You know, the old measure twice, cut once rule. All right, the exhaust is all in. I haven't tightened it up yet. Here you can see it all the way up there. So starting at the front, we're gonna start putting clamps on, make sure the V-band clamp's tight, and we'll just tighten our way down. Some people will say to slide these on first before you slide the whole exhaust together. Then you can just slide them in place and bolt them up. I've always just unbolted the clamps, put them around, and then tightened them up. Oh, the clamps are on, she's all tight. I like how this 5-inch works even with the coil rear suspension. You don't even have to take the spare tire heat shield off. And there it is, nice and solid. We'll fire it up at the end and see what it sounds like. I'm also gonna be doing a video strictly on reviewing the kit once it's installed. I'll post that video after this video is uploaded. But now we are going to tackle the EGR system, and this isn't that hard either. The 6.7 Cummins is probably the easiest EGR system to remove on any diesel truck engine. I believe I mentioned this before, but you don't have to actually remove the EGR. You can just unplug it along with a throttle valve if you choose to leave it on the truck. But I always recommend removing it if you can, just because then you know that no exhaust is going back into your engine and it's just a cleaner look. Regardless of if you're removing it or not, like I said, you have to unplug it. So unplug this guy, plug that guy, and then follow this wire down and unplug him too. Then I can't really show it, but your throttle valve is on the back of your intake elbow back here. So if you kind of use a mirror and stuff, there is another plug down. If you follow this wire, that goes to a connector for your throttle valve. That needs to be unplugged as well. So I'm gonna go through this as quick as possible. You're gonna have to use some of your own mechanical knowledge for this, but trust me, it's not that bad. Remove this plastic cover. Remove this crossover tube. There's also a hidden 8mm bolt down there. Remove this EGR valve. Clean up any remaining gasket material. Grab this blocker plate and 4 of these Allen screws. Make sure the O-rings are in place. Tighten the blocker plate down. Remove this heat shield and remove this heat shield. Remove this piece along with this piece. They're connected together with these cables. There's some bolts going that way, bolts going on the side. There's 4 bolts to hold this part on. This is what it will look like. Remove this V-band clamp and these 2 nuts. We'll take this piece off. For this nut down there, I have this wrench that I put a big angle on. I put it on the nut and then I use a pry bar to pry the wrench over. Reuse this gasket and install your blocker plate. Make sure you install it with the flat side down. You're gonna reuse the nuts that were on it to secure it. Now the kit doesn't come with these, but I'm gonna put some washers down because it looks like the threads stop before they get into the blocker plate, which means that the threads will just bottom out on the threads and they won't actually tighten this down. So I'm just putting these washers that I have in the shop just to give it a little more space so that it secures it nicely on the threads. Unplug this exhaust back pressure sensor, and then let's just get this electrical out of the way. We'll plug it back in afterwards, and then this hose here coming off your valve cover, just take that hose clamp, move it back, and let's just move that and tuck it up over here somewhere just to free up some space. Remove this nut and the bolt underneath it, and then the other 3 bolts, along with this bolt here that mounts this coolant tube to the EGR cooler. Now at the back of the cooler, there's 2 more 15mm nuts. So get a ratchet back there and remove them. This is what I use to get them. I just slide that back in there and then you can loosen those 2 nuts. Remove this 7mm bolt and then use an upholstery tool just to pop this sensor out. You don't have to unplug it, just pop it out. Now you may not like what I'm about to do. You can do it the long way where you take off all these bolts for your valve cover and pop it up out of the way. Because as you can see, this is blocking this coolant line we need to get up. But all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut it here, and here, and just trim this little corner up, and then this coolant line can pop up and you don't need to remove the whole cover. That's what it looks like after I've trimmed it. So you may be thinking, Kyle, we didn't drain the coolant, and that's correct because draining the coolant on these trucks is a pain in the ass and we really don't have to. So when we remove this EGR cooler, a little bit of coolant is gonna spray out. Not much, just a little bit. Just try to keep the EGR cooler nice and level as you bring it out. It will be full of coolant. Once you have it out of the truck, tip it into a pail and you can drain it that way. I do recommend slowly removing this coolant reservoir cap just because it can hold pressure. If your truck is warm and you're working on it right now, chances are there'll be pressure in here. And when we go to pop off this line, it will explode with coolant everywhere. Don't ask me how I know, but I know. And I usually just use a pry bar and I slowly work this back and forth. Now this line's loose. Try to lift from the back of the EGR cooler and just lift it up off the studs. It has a pedestal just like this. So try to lift the back up off the studs because then we gotta try to push it forward and pop it out of here. Okay, I lifted the back. I'm just gonna go like this and pop it out just like that. So now this EGR cooler is loose. And there it is. Remove this bracket. There's 2 13mm bolts. You access them from kind of down in here. Make sure this plug is tight and make sure you have the factory gasket on the back of the exhaust manifold there. We're also going to use some of these washers. Again, these are not included in the kit. You have to have your own. I'm just using them as spacers just so I get a good clamp so this stays nice and tight. And this, if you want, you can run an exhaust gas temperature sensor here. I think you can get one that works with EasyLink. There's it all tightened down. Put the O-ring on this nipple. Very gently bend this exhaust back pressure just kind of forward and out of the way a little bit. I usually find it easier to just remove this cover too. We want it over here because we're gonna have a coolant line coming in here. Put some oil or Vaseline on this O-ring. We're gonna try to put it in place. It can be very tight. I'm using channel locks and trying to clamp this thing in. But even with channel locks, I can't get it in. So I think this O-ring is too big. I will be letting them know that I think they need to send multiple O-rings or a smaller O-ring. But I think this O-ring that came with it is too big. Luckily, O-rings are cheap and you can get them just about anywhere. So I'm just gonna find one that's a little bit smaller that will work better. I ended up using this size that's literally just a tiny bit skinnier and it popped in no problem. There's it in the truck and it's solid. It's not gonna be leaking. Remove this exhaust manifold bolt. replace it with one of these and tighten. The kit comes with 2 of these, so you could remove this one too, but this one has the heat shield. It'd be way more work to do, and honestly, with just this one, it's gonna be more than solid enough, so I wouldn't even do this one if I were you. Just leave it like that. Then you can take this bracket, slide it over top of the nipple here, and as you can see back here, we're gonna use one of these bolts. You're gonna go through the bracket into this thing, into that bolt you put there, and you can secure it that way. There's also a nut and bolt and some washers for in here, so you can secure it right there as well. Then you're going to also mount this dipstick to the top, I believe, just like that. There should be some bolts for that as well. That is rock solid. Dipstick, that bracket, and right here are all tight. Install this hose with hose clamps. Now what we can do is we can flip this guy back and put it back on. Grab this sensor, put it back in, make sure you put the bolt back in. Plug this back pressure sensor back in. Make sure your reservoir cap is tight. If you haven't done so already, use a mirror and a pick and look over here, and kind of down here is a connector. That's for your throttle valve. Unplug that, and then with the wires, we can just zip tie them out of the way. If you haven't done one before, the throttle valve is gonna be a pain in the ass to unplug, but here's the plug for it. So I'm just gonna zip tie these out of the way. I think that's it. This is what I had left over from the kit, so if you have some hardware left over, don't worry about it. So do a final look over, but yeah, that should be it. You should be good to go. Run it up to temperature, check for leaks. If it does leak, this is probably about the only spot it would leak. Check the coolant level afterwards. By the way, this is all the coolant that's spilled, just a little bit. Probably the most common problem people will find after they do this delete is either no boost pressure, not enough boost pressure, or they'll hear a loud kind of whine, kind of like a screeching sound. And if you experience that, just make sure that your blocker plates on your exhaust manifold are tightened down all the way, because if they aren't, that boost pressure can escape. It can make a loud noise, and it can also lose boost pressure. So that's just a tip I have. All right, the moment we've all been waiting for. Let's hear what this thing sounds like. Oh, baby. That thing sounds amazing. That's a 5-inch straight pipe exhaust, no muffler. Like I said, I'm gonna take it out tomorrow and I'm gonna actually drive it. I'll get some better sound clips. I'll do my honest review of the tuning, the parts and everything, and just see how it performs. But it's late right now, so I don't wanna do that, plus it's dark outside. But anyways, that's pretty much it for the video. That goes over the whole entire delete process from tuning, DPF removal, exhaust, and EGR delete. So again, links down in the description to the Diesel Dudes if you want to pick up a kit like this for yourself. I'm going to be doing more videos. I'm going to do a video on a 2022 truck, which is different. You got to swap ECMs for them. And I'll do a couple of videos on some other engines as well. Comment down below if there's a specific truck you want to see me work on. Keep an eye out for the driving review video of this delete. Check out my Instagram at Dark Iron Diesel. And these videos take a lot of work, so please like and subscribe. It helps me out a ton. Anyways, guys, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you on another video.